Hello, everyone. We're your hosts, Beth Orr,
and Bridget Querns.
and we welcome you to Quick Moments and Passionate Pursuits, the Unfolding, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new insights, inspiration, and perspectives along the way. Good morning, my friend.
Well, good morning again.
Yes. So we're starting this endeavor that we've been kind of planning for a long time, meaning 2.5 weeks.
Forever.
Forever. It's like child time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is, because it feels like such a long time. It feels like a lifetime, like an eternity of, oh my goodness, when are we going to get this started? And you did the same thing I did, or I just looked back and I'm like, wait a second. Why does it feel like it's been so long when it's only been a couple weeks? And why does it feel so urgent? Like, oh my gosh, we need to get started right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love where you're starting with this urgency. I think it's important to talk about. But so we've got this title that I think we could maybe talk about first, just so people know, like, what are you tuning into?
Yeah.
And Bridget has a podcast already in place called Passionate Pursuits. And I have a podcast called Click Moments, which is getting ready to launch this week. So we are at different places in our launch, but we are joining our two minds and our two concepts and our energy into Passionate Pursuits and Quick Moments, the unfolding.
Yes.
And we're saying the unfolding. Why?
Because this is a revelation of something, and we're not quite sure what exactly it is. We just know that kind of all of a sudden we recognized our places in something greater than ourselves and felt this really almost, what is the word? Unignorable? What is the word that I'm looking for, Beth? this urge, an urge that we could not ignore.
It's the urgency that you were talking about.
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, we just got swept into this really powerful wave, and let's ride it. Let's ride it and see where it's going and what exactly it is that we're part of.
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about cosmic breadcrumbs, and I feel like this is a cosmic loaf.
Yeah, this is the whole stinking loaf. We found the loaf that Hansel and Gretel were ripping the crumbs off of, and it's here. This is it.
But I think that that's the urgency. Like, it's interesting because I think you're somewhat like me in that I'm a very practical person, but I'm also intuitively guided. And when I know that something is right,
Yeah.
I don't I get this sense of urgency with, we don't know how much time we have here. Like, any of us coming out of COVID know that it's an illusion to think that, that we know how much time we have. And when you understand that something is very clearly yours to do, I just want to get it started.
Yeah.
I'm like, there may be some doubt and some uncertainty with some things that I'm working on, or there may be a delay, but there is no doubt, there is no uncertainty, there's no need to delay something that's like, go.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell people that all the time. Just start. But what's really cool is we're just starting, and we really have very little in terms of direction or structure or even an idea of what exactly it is that we are starting. So it feels urgent, and also it feels sort of shadowy and mystical in all of the best possible ways.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm so excited about is so much often, like, I think we all try to live from a space of accepting the ambiguity with the path that we
Mm-hmm.
may be on and being willing to walk a path that has a lot of uncertainties. To me, this is this genuine opportunity to strengthen those neural pathways and say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know this. I know it feels right. I know that it's coming from the universe. And I know that every single time we have a conversation, something is birthed in that conversation that amplifies my energy
Mm-hmm.
about what's happening in the world and is really illuminating. Like it
Yeah.
somehow does something within me.
Yeah.
So that to the title of what I'm working on, click moments, every single time we talk, something that wasn't a click moment already inside me happens through our conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's this energetic, we've touched upon some sort of energetic field or portal or something where when we when we bring our energies together, because we still haven't even met in person. Like
No,
we're just combining our energies virtually over space, because we know space doesn't exist, right? Time doesn't exist. So there is no separation. So we can combine our energies just by focusing on one another in our conversation. So when we combine those energies, like this really intense portal, I just want to call it a portal, like opens up, and it is exponentially greater than what we could have brought to the table or created on our own.
yes, yeah. And I think you mentioning portal kind of reminds me. I was listening the other day to a book and it was talking about quantum entanglement.
Mm,
And so, you've talked about the web before and how we, kind of pull on each other's web. But I also think that when you're linked on that string in a web, there is an entanglement, there
mm,
is a connection,
mhm.
there is now a line. And in this line, this connection, it's instantaneous. We,
Yeah.
we like think, we like imagine we're walking. And so it has to take some sort of time, right? But
Mhm.
in this quantum world, it's like, they talk about like, how is it that one object is in A and then suddenly it's in B, and there's been no gap in time. It just
Right.
is here and then it's there.
Yeah.
It's like that with quantum entanglement. And I think when we start to have connections with people, genuine connections for whatever reasons, right?
Mm,
Then there is this, like, it reminds me that you do not have to be in front of somebody in order to benefit from
yeah.
or be impacted in any way from their energy,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. When you were talking, I just kept getting this hit about our subconscious, right? So we operate from our conscious mind, which is pretty much the mind that we access during normal thought and routine activity. But our subconscious holds the bank of all memory, thought, wisdom, love. It is like this infinite bank of knowledge. And what if the subconscious that we're operating from exists in the same location? Right? So perhaps that's why when we're
Mm,
remembering things that we feel like we're remembering, but it's not the normal, oh, I remember where I left my phone kind of remembering. It's like
mhm.
this really, really deep, like I said before, primal remembering of like, oh, there's something really, again, urgent. Like there's something really pressing. There's something really, really deeply important here. And important doesn't even scratch the surface. Crucial, critical that we're uncovering. And it feels like we're both sort of remembering that from the same place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, you're describing like the one, right? Like the
Yeah.
one, that we're all interconnected. But again, even though we're co-located in this one, not everybody's energy is attuned to the one.
Mm,
So that means that not everybody could be cognizant of this energy or this realization, right? Because
mhm.
they're not attuned to that. And the frequency, the strength of the frequency matters. The proximity might matter. I don't know yet.
Can't wait to find out.
I mean, I don't know. Like I was thinking about that when you were talking and I was like, if you're connected like in this way where it's instantaneous and the energy is strong,
Mm.
does it really matter? If it's,
I have
like
to
I don't
believe
know.
I have to believe yes and no. No, in the sense that we're already connected.
Right.
But yes, also in the sense that in this third density illusion, there will be power that is unlocked when our body complexes are residing in the same local area, I
Right.
feel like.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And it's just part of
Yeah.
the illusion. Like we know that it doesn't matter and we can say that, but when like there's just something like we're still in this illusion. So when
Mhm.
when you see someone face to face who you've never seen face to face before, you can't help but have excitement and joy
Yeah.
well up within you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just like any meeting, even if you know each other, there's a
Hmm.
difference between being afar and being together. There just
Yeah.
is.
Yep.
And some of that's just being attuned to the energy itself and it being so close that it's almost like sometimes you experience something and you feel something and you may or may not realize it's connected to this external thing. But
Mm,
when you're in front of somebody, it's much easier to very clearly say, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah." Like, and also to kind of be willing to kind of go into it and to be like, "Okay, what's this? What's happening here?" You
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So, so one of the things that we talked about, just briefly, because really, like you said, there's really hasn't been a whole lot of like chosen direction, and I
Yeah.
will add to the listeners that that is indeed purposeful on our part. It's a conscious decision on our part. How many times in our life do we believe that we should do something? Do we think that something is a direction that we should go?
Mm,
But how few times do we actually follow that path, or do we follow it and have a documented unfolding of that
hmm.
to where this doesn't just apply to us. The unfolding doesn't just apply to us. What this does is it opens up hopefully other people's minds to, wow, when I have that nudge and when I'm told like this is an emphatic yes.
Hmm.
If we did not follow the emphatic yes, this would not be happening. Whatever this leads to will not happen.
Yeah.
And so to me, there's a real opportunity for myself, and I'm sure you and others to take a look at this and say, wow, like when you have that emphatic yes, this is what you could be passing on. Like
Yeah.
something in your version that can change like how you experience life.
Yeah. I, so a couple things that I was thinking of as you were saying that. The first one being, I couldn't have said no to this. It would have been physically impossible. And I think that there's a lot of inner work that we've both done that allowed us to come to the place where there was no like it couldn't not happen for us.
Mhm. Mhm.
But on the other hand, I want to honor what if people are experiencing what they feel is an emphatic yes, and then all of a sudden, all of those doubts or fears start to bubble up. And you know how that happens. Like I could have very well said, if I say that I'm feeling really drawn to her, is she going to go, oh, that's weird. We don't even know each other. There's all those
Mhm.
questions that could come
Mhm.
up.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm wondering, like, let's explore some of that. Like, what could possibly present itself as a barrier, and how did how did we not encounter that? But how would we have dealt with it if and when we do or did?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great because you're talking about resistance. Stephen Pressfield talks
Hmm.
about resistance, and that always being something that is, present when you're following a calling, or your emphatic yes, as I'm starting to
Yeah.
realize they're synonyms. Um, and I'll just be honest, like I had some of those moments along the way in the last couple of weeks. I was but it's because of my work on
Mm.
myself that I recognized it for what it was. So I had this moment where I was like, what are you doing? Like, you've been planning this podcast for 3 years, and you're going to jump into a podcast with somebody that you met 4 weeks ago. And I was like, that seems a bit impulsive. Like, are you okay? Like, I had this whole rhetoric and dialogue going on in my head, but I knew. I was like, just like you, I was like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying no to this.
Yeah.
I can say, like, what is this going to look like?
Hmm.
Does it have to look like what we originally talked about? I can modify, but I cannot not move forward. Like
Yeah.
that I knew. And
Yeah.
I also recognized really quickly that this was just the resistance
Mm.
working on me.
Yeah.
And I had to keep not resisting back, because that's not the way to, I think that's not the way that I choose to handle it. But I feel like I just got curious and kept an open stance. Where is this coming from?
Mm.
What is this about?
Oh,
Like
I
doing
love,
that,
love, love. Yeah.
just
Hmm.
like pausing and breathing. And um yeah, somebody dear to me is really good about the pause,
Mm.
and I've started to really pay attention to the benefit of that pause. Is that what that is,
Literally
the
means
pause?
pause.
Oh
Selah
my
means
gosh,
pause.
holy cow.
Hmm.
Okay,
It
that's
was
awesome.
a direction written into the Psalms for the psalmist to pause, like in music. Pause, breathe. Yeah, have it written on
Wow.
myself. Yeah.
Wow. I need to have it on my forehead.
Right? Yeah.
But no, I think it's beautiful because we think pause means doubt, but
Mm.
pause is actually just discernment. Pause is
Mhm.
actually just like, give yourself time to feel into this and allow the rhetoric of like the wisdom that to match up against the actual facts and circumstances, and take all of the things that are happening inside of you and let it marinate for a moment,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. When you said resistance, that uh, all of these pingy things are happening. Resistance purifies us. It purifies the intention. It purifies the forward progress. Resistance works with us in creating and building something that is more resilient.
Mhm.
So without resistance, we're just going to roll on ahead, steamroll, and not think of, how am I honoring myself in this? How am I honoring the time that I have? How am I honoring the other commitments I've made? And we may or may not choose to release a commitment, but at least the resistance gives us that pause, that time to really discern and to purify our intention of, okay, so we thought it could look like this, but we've also chosen to honor, like, for example, our individual podcasts. We're moving ahead with those because they
Mhm.
bring joy, because they're our preferences. And that's great.
Yeah.
Nothing ever told us you have to give up all of these other things if you're going to do this. We made that up. But we
Mhm.
paused and allowed the resistance to really clarify, what are we doing here and how are we moving ahead, into honoring one another and ourselves in the process. And when you said just one thing, when that resistance comes, don't resist back. Because if we allow the resistance to work with us, we will, like I said, clarify and purify the intention, and become resilient. But if we resist back, there's going to be a hardening that takes place.
Yes.
So I'm thinking of like, if you're working with clay and if it's resisting you, at some point that clay is going to dry before you could mold it. And then it's not
Mm,
effective. It's not an effective vessel. But there is a resistance that goes both ways. If it didn't resist at all, it'd be watery. It would just fall apart. So it
mhm,
resists to a certain point, and then you work with the resistance to create something that is beautiful and functional and can hold, a vessel holds space for something.
I love that so much. You actually said something, of course, that I wrote down, which is resistance allows us to honor ourselves and others.
Hmm.
And I think, we have these polar opposites, like I think it's Marianne Williamson that kind of talks about we have these two, opposite sides of the spectrum, and the opposite of love is fear.
Mm,
And so when you start to look at, you have love and you have fear as a response, and love is this kind of infinite, this space that I want to always try to respond from versus fear.
hmm.
When you look at resistance and you respond with resistance, you're responding in full fear, right? And when you respond like that, and I use this for myself too, because I have these moments where when I catch myself responding in fear, there's the potential for frustration, there's the
Mm,
potential for uncertainty, there's the potential for resentment, all of
hmm.
these things because you're not honoring yourself and
Yep.
the other person. But when you respond in love and you step back, like for example, when I was thinking about like, okay, so what are you doing? Like, you've got this like new podcast, but you got your own podcast. And so like you're not going to launch your podcast, or like what does this mean for you and what you've been dreaming of? And then I just stopped for a second and I was like, just feel into it for a bit. Just feel into it. What do you want? Now you're going to ask her what she wants, but what do you see from her? And what I noticed is you look like you really love what you're doing with your passionate pursuits.
Mm,
I like stopped for a second and I was like, what would that feel like to her to lose that or give that up or
mm,
delay that or put it on hold? And I was like, that's not mine to decide,
yeah.
but I was just aware that it brought me a lot of joy watching you experience joy in your
Mm,
creation,
mm,
right? And so I could feel the joy and the love that you have for what you've already created. And then I was like, I feel like anticipatory joy in what I'm
yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got all of these interviews lined up with people that I've developed relationships with, that they, are counting on me to come back around and have those conversations. And when I thought about what you and I were creating, I was like, I don't know where that fits.
Hmm.
I don't know where that fits. And I was like, so if I were to honor myself, it would be moving forward,
Hmm.
doing that. Like, and so, yeah, so there's just like, I point that out because I think that there's a real value in what you started with, which I think many people can see themselves in a space. What does it look like for us to walk through resistance? What kinds of questions come up? What kind of practices do we have? What kinds of dialogue comes into our head? How do we
Hmm.
discern and assess that? And I think it's really important to share that because it is a muscle, it is a new skill, it is something that we're constantly nurturing. And as a human,
Yeah.
that we're always going to come up against,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh man. Like, what does it look like to be more vulnerable? Um, just to know that we're not going through the questions alone, that there's no danger in presenting to one another, oh, here's where my brain just went with that, or here's what I just felt in my body. I don't know what it means, but I felt it. And just totally presenting all of that and having, and this is what love is having the trust that when I present all of me, we can hold that together and there's no danger to us or
Mm-mm,
to whatever we're creating.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, when you were talking about about click moments and about passionate pursuits and our individual things that bring us joy, for some reason my brain just goes here. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like Abraham and the binding of Isaac. So like
Mm.
the angel of God asks Abraham to sacrifice his son, and he was willing. And this can totally be, because we know that all is one. This could be either a true story written in stone, or it could be a total metaphor. But
Mhm.
either way, what is really interesting is we both came to a point where we said to one another, I'm willing to give up or sacrifice anything to follow this. Anything. And
Yeah.
really, honestly, truly, I think that I had to recognize for myself, yeah, this feels so incredibly right and good and full of love that there's nothing that I wouldn't give up or sacrifice or put down to follow it. But it didn't mean that we had to.
Yes. Yes. That's so perfectly said. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think I went through almost the same thing. Like,
Mm,
it was just this awareness that, yes, I was willing to not start and launch my podcast. It just made a lot of sense, with what we were talking about. But it was in that space of submission,
mhm,
surrender,
mhm,
knowing that it was, that we were moving forward in some direction, and not falling into the resistance, but more just that curiosity stance that almost gave it space to have something new, a new solution came forward in the lack
mhm.
of resistance. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, why does it have to be yes or no? Why does it
Yeah.
have to be this or that? Is there some sort of middle ground? Like, I was almost like, oh, wait, something new is forming, and much like the painting behind me, it was like this conglomerate of like potential, and all of a sudden it
Mhm.
just started to like go, oh wait, something in the middle. Wait, what would that look like? And as I continued to ask questions, it took more form,
Yeah, it's really
right?
funny because your painting has like two kind of distinct areas of coloration, and then that bright white middle area. And it's we can say it's all occurring from this one space. It's all occurring together, but there's still distinct areas in that. And earlier when you were talking about love and fear, I wrote down underneath love and fear, expansive and contracting. Love is an expansive
Mm-hmm.
feeling that
Yes.
you feel. It expands right from here, right from your heart center, and just expands and expands and expands. And the more love you get to experience in life, the more you're like, I didn't know I could possibly love anymore. I didn't know that there was space for more love, but it just keeps growing and doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And fear, we know. I mean, we physically do this with our bodies and we're afraid. We hunch over, pull in, contract, get smaller,
Yeah.
and it stomps out that space. So, what if this expansive love, this portal that's opening, can only be creative, can only be generative? It
Mm,
can only bring more.
mm, mhm.
So, following that just meant more is coming. And we can't necessarily consciously envision what the more looks like, because like just in the same way my mind cannot fathom infinity. It doesn't make sense.
Yes,
I can't wrap my brain around that as much as I've tried to, but it doesn't mean it isn't. It just
exactly.
keeps growing and expanding, and we're just holding space for whatever that looks like to come forth.
Yes. Yeah, I like that, and I think many times we fall into these, it's almost like society puts a this illusion of understanding the trajectory of what's getting ready to unfold, but
Mm,
yet there is so much ambiguity within it. So, in all the different types of relationships that people have, whether it's a job, whether it's a friendship, whether it's, a partnership of some sort, there's always like this hope or expectation for what the unfolding is going to kind of look like,
Mhm.
but yet there isn't.
Yeah.
You can't possibly know how, for example, you've had 4 children. You can't possibly know how that love is going to unfold.
Yeah.
You just know that you're there for the unfolding. You have no idea what it's going to look like, right?
Yeah.
But I think because, in a podcast or in a job, like a job has a job description. So there's some parameters around it.
Right.
A podcast usually has a very clear, you know, point that they're trying
Mhm.
to make. Although I will say these concepts of passionate pursuits, we talk about and click moments. We talk about what's important to us is talking about topics in a way that illuminates something new,
Mhm.
an expansion of knowledge or understanding of the world, which expands
Yeah.
then our experience here, right?
Yep.
And then passionate pursuits is around, we've talked both, is very near and dear to our hearts around authenticity and following our unique joy,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so that's what, like, you and I have this unique joy in having these types of conversations, not
Mhm.
knowing where they're going, not taking a topic,
Yeah.
but just taking concepts
Right.
and riffing on those concepts brings both of us tremendous joy,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's to borrow a word from a previous podcast, it's following your bliss.
Yes.
It's just we've got this little golden thread of bliss, and we're just gonna, even if everything around us is darkness and we have no idea where it's leading, there's something so exciting and hopeful and beautiful and wonderful and good and every possible adjective that I could ascribe to it in following that wherever it's going,
Yeah.
and not needing to know where it's leading, because I trust, there's this level of trust and faith, if you want to call it feral faith, in just wildly, kind of abandoning, or we're abandoning, but we're still following because there's still this thread that we're tugging on, that we're following.
Man, I just had a whole visual,
Oh, yes.
um, because I was thinking about, is it spelunkers?
Oh my
The
gosh.
cave
Yes.
people that, like, they have a rope and
Yeah,
they're,
you're
like,
right.
sliding through dark, tight spaces, and they're, like, going deeper and deeper into the caverns of the
Yeah.
unknown, and then sometimes they eventually get into a bioluminescent opening
Hmm.
that's like, "Oh my gosh, look at what exists inside here," right? It's
Yeah.
almost like that.
Yeah,
It's like,
it is.
going into the deep, going into with just this little faith string, right? Um, and just following where it goes, believing that at some point there's gonna be this bioluminescent opening
Mm,
that is like all of this beauty is gonna be there, and we're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if anybody's ever seen this before."
yeah.
And if somebody has, maybe haven't documented it, and not
Right.
everybody knows. So let's talk about this. This is cool,
Yeah. So we are following that faith string. I love it.
right?
Maybe with our little headlamps on that do very, very little good, if anything. And we brought the camera crew.
Yeah,
Come
right.
on, you're going to explore and you're going to come with us, and hopefully whatever it is that gets revealed, you'll be present for it.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what we're doing. Yeah, that makes so much sense. What a cool image.
And as you were relaying it back to me, I started to see, if you go back to this collective,
Hmm.
we're all in this collective, and maybe just like you or I that have this realization right now, or maybe a couple other people over here, because we know that sometimes when something happens in the collective A here, it shows up in B. That's just how it works. But think about how, if around us the camera crew starts to see what we're seeing,
Hmm.
and then it grows, and then 10 people listen to the podcast, and then they see it and it grows, and then those 10 people share it with somebody else and it grows. This is the expansion opportunity within the whole,
Yep.
is to, the more you shed light or cast light on something, the more you share something with others, the more it contributes to the collective,
Mm-hmm.
right? The more it like lights other people's awareness of like what's possible. And in their unique ecosystem, given their unique knowledge and
Yeah.
their unique path, it does something different to them
Yeah.
that has the
Yeah.
potential, when reflected back, to add something to the discussion,
Yeah.
right?
I just got this incredible feeling of how profound. And there is still this sense of we're just surrendering. Like all we're doing is taking our one little candle and lighting a few other flames. And then that's it. And then we're done. And then our job is done. And then we just hold
Mhm,
our candle. And
mhm.
wherever it goes from there and whatever happens, maybe we had one tiny part in it. That's why I love to use the words activating and igniting, because I really see that as like my spiritual duty here is to activate and to ignite. But then I'm hands off. Then I'm just standing there glowing on my own and hoping that others reflect that glow and glow themselves.
Yeah,
But it's profound, and it's also humbling because I, I'm not I'm not infringing on anyone else's free will. I'm not
yes,
pushing for anything to happen in a way that I want it to happen. I'm totally hands off and unattached from wherever it goes once I've done my job.
that's beautiful. Yeah, I think that's, it kinda reminds me of the dream that I had a couple weeks ago that I shared with
Mm,
you in the high rise,
yep.
where it's, you know, it's really just walking past and, like, the genuine respect, and that hasn't always been my understanding.
Mm,
The genuine respect that goes into sharing something that you have found impactful in your own life, just sharing it to see if it resonates with somebody. And it may resonate, it may not. It may plant a seed that resonates later. It may
mhm,
plant a seed that resonates given an activation that somebody else puts on it 2 weeks from now. But the reality is that the more that we can really see that it's not our responsibility to do anything onto or towards somebody else, but to instead just offer.
mhm.
And it's almost not even offering. It's more
Yeah.
just like being and living, because
It's just
offering
being.
even suggests like you're trying to give something. When
Yep.
in actuality, I think what I think is beautiful about this is we're literally just truly unfolding to unfold with no purpose
Yeah.
other than to say, hmm, what what's going to happen, right? And does something resonate? I don't know, but it's funny. I grabbed 3 books because originally, I was going to be on the computer and now I'm on the phone. But here's
Mm.
the books I had to kind of put my computer up. One of them I didn't even know I
Oh.
grabbed was The Surrender Experiment. Isn't that funny?
That's
Like,
funny.
to have that be one of the books, because that you're right, that really is, it's the surrender that, I think gives people such spaciousness to
Mm,
take
yeah.
whatever resonates with them given their unique journey. We couldn't possibly know where somebody's coming in from to know what stands out.
Yeah.
Do you ever notice like times like when like I've done talks before and at different places, and I'll talk for an hour and somebody will come up and want to talk after, and they'll say, "Oh man, when you said this, wow, that really hit me." And I was like, "Did I say that?"
I don't even remember it. Yeah.
I'm not even sure that that was on the like, I'm not even sure if I did say it, but what
Yeah.
my point is that it's people's interpretation of what you said, not what you actually said.
Yes. Yeah. That's the I mean, surrender comes into play in so many places, but again, that's another really interesting part of surrendering is that okay, so I can say this phrase with this intention And then someone else can receive a part of that, commingle it with the neural pathways that already exist within their wiring, and something brand new gets birthed from that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
And it wasn't for us to know.
Wasn't for us to know. Exactly. Doesn't that feel freeing?
So liberating. Yep.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think in my life, I've felt so much responsibility for how information or programs or different things
Mm.
land within a person. Some of that's by just the grants and metrics and, just the different types of things that are in place. But, we have this responsibility that can be difficult to really absorb sometimes. And there's some freedom for me, given this juncture in my life, to be free of the responsibility of the outcome. And that it's just like, it's literally just a generous sharing to be received or not. And
Hmm.
either way, it's okay. It's not personal.
Okay, this is really cool. This is another play on words. So, in the word responsible, we're both manifesting generators. And
Mhm.
I believe it's the
That's human design.
strategy, right? Okay, so the strategy of a manifesting generator is that what it is? The strategy? Yeah, is to respond.
Mm,
It's not to create or initiate, which we often think that it's that, but that's like our misjudgment of ourselves. It's to respond. So it's always in response to a stimulus. So where our response ability lies is in responding to what is presented by creator, universe, God, spirit, whatever to us. That's where the responsibility is.
I love that. And this gets to, I think, a passion of both of ours, which is intuition, right? So when spirit is upon us or around us or encouraging us or spirit guides or whatever the universe, whatever way invisibly it's interacting with us and coming within us, that response to that invisible nudge is our intuition lighting, is our
Yeah.
intuition being informed. And the question is, do we stay in this? Like I come from Missouri, which is the show me state. Show
Mm.
me. Very tactile, right? Very, if I can't see it, feel it, touch it, if it doesn't make sense to me, then, then we don't follow it. But yet,
Mhm.
it's in the middle of the Bible Belt where, everything like that is biblical or spiritual is elusive, invisible, not show me.
Yeah.
It's feel me. Are you feeling me?
Mhm.
And so, from an intuition perspective, I think that cultivating and honoring and tuning into our intuition um, is a way that we do respond
Mhm.
to this invisible divinity or
Mhm.
creator beyond us.
It's so funny. I'm looking at the notes that I wrote for myself before we
Mm,
started talking. And really, it's not even notes. I just have this practice. I like to try to write 50 words a day every day, just
mhm.
getting into the habit of doing little steps towards things.
Love that.
And so the first thing I wrote was a dream that I had a few nights ago. It wasn't even a dream, it was a message at the end of a dream. And it came through so loudly and clearly, I had to sit straight up, turn on a light, and write it down.
Mm,
And it wasn't necessarily connected to anything that happened in the dream. It just it was like this voice was like, all right, here's the message. And it said, exponentially more power and value lies in being the player who is in the matrix and has woken up than the controller outside the matrix who is trying to feed the players information.
Mm.
And the understanding that came from that was, we're awake. We see what this is for what it is, and there is exponentially more power granted, power and value, not power in the self-serving sense, but like wisdom and value and love in going, I see this for what it is. And because I'm in it still, whoa, what comes with that versus spirit or guides or angels who, yes, we have access to them, but that access is tenuous and it's not direct and it's not concrete. It's what you said, it's elusive, but we're in it. We're in it and we're awake and we get to respond now to what we see with this new level of vision.
Yeah, it's, the word is escaping me. It begins with an I. But I'm thinking about, it's not influence, but as you said, power. I was thinking about a word that's like seated. It's not influence, but it's some word that means to, we have this ability now to like look around with such clarity, but yet it's, how do you say, muddled clarity? But it this muddled clarity, but it's like it's like through the awareness and the seat of being really centered and grounded in, I know what it is. It's that it's not a fear-based place. Sometimes, like when you think about the Matrix and you remember that moment in the movie where Neo wakes up and he looks around and he's disoriented and he's freaked out and he's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And he sees the whole thing. It's like there comes a point where you become the calm Neo and you're like, you're beyond, because because here's the thing. Initially, being awake is not for the faint of heart.
Oh, yeah.
It's very like, oh my gosh, the safety of being asleep and being like, I know what's happening and this is the world and here's what to expect, right? We're still all going to get to the same place. Okay, we're still going to get beyond this, right, to the collective. But what's your experience like while you're here? What if you could actually be tapped into this divinity and you can realize and experience the richness and fullness of life? This is the heaven on earth. This is the like opportunity to say, I'm not going to just do this and do that and expect this and expect that and have this really finite experience with human emotion at the risk of something bad happening.
Right.
But I'm going to hold my hands open and be like, ooh, I'm willing to do it all. I'm willing to like, what could happen if I do this?
It becomes the playground.
Yeah.
It's the soul's playground. That's what I keep calling it. All of a sudden, we realize we're not in the freaking hospital. It's just not an emergency. We're just playing on the playground.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
like
it's great.
It's actually encouraged. Just like kids on a playground. Like it is literally encouraged, because I believe that it kind of informs the experience of the collective. Right? So it's like Lewis and Clark, or it's like early explorers, it can be a little messy.
Oh yeah.
There can be some dangers, but the more we can like walk on that path and understand what's there, the more it's like, oh cool, like this is a possibility. And I think it's so important to me, and I'd be interested to know how you experience this, but there was a time in my life that I followed my intuition, but I didn't necessarily call it that, and it was a fluke.
Mm. Mhm.
And now I live by my intuition.
Yeah.
And I think about my life and how amazing it is. And it's not perfect. It is
Oh.
not perfect. But I think about how much I love leading an intuitively guided life versus
Mhm.
I'm trying to muscle through all this based upon my limited understanding of the world.
Mm.
What how has your
Yeah.
experience been with that?
Okay, I just got this visual of my intuition like prior to waking up and my intuition now.
Yes.
And so like my intuition prior to waking up, the way that I experienced it was literally like a crossing guard stop sign, right? Stop, walk. That's all we had. We got red, stop, don't proceed. Oh,
Yeah.
crap, you did. You're going to get hit by a car. Or walk, you're good. It's safe. Here you go. That was it. That was like and I guess I would have called it like a conscience, or whatever,
Mhm.
something very, but it was very basic and just, no, don't do that. Or, yeah, okay, that's fine. Now it's like, I can't even, I was gonna say like one of those like really multi-sided die that they use in like, I don't know, the role-playing games, but it's not even that. It's not even
Mm.
structured like that. It's got so many colors and flavors and nuance. There's so much nuance. It I trust it so deeply, and it actually provides so much more in terms of, you could say yes to this. There's a permission here, but if you say yes to this, here's the other things that make it's just so much more nuanced than yes, no, good, bad, stop, walk. I guess
Mhm.
it's my experience of it now.
Ooh, okay, so when you just said that, I was thinking about how whatever the outcomes of following our intuition are, and whatever comes along with accepting it,
Mhm.
I'm starting to wonder if it's not when we respond, it's for the collective higher good, but not necessarily does that mean it's pain free
Mm,
or that I won't have costs or you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
like sometimes we think that it has to be all sunshine and rainbows through the process.
Mm,
But in actuality, oftentimes when we're following our intuition, I almost feel like the intuition has a collective benefit
yep.
that we, by product of the collective benefit, find love, peace, and joy within it
Mhm.
on the
Mhm.
other side. But it's not because we personally have benefited
Yeah.
necessarily,
Yeah.
but yet usually we do.
Right. Because there is no separation.
Exactly.
Separation is an illusion. So another thing I wrote down was, okay, how can we honor ourselves? And as one of my previous guests said, our preferences and boundaries. How can we honor our preferences and boundaries first and foremost without that becoming self serving and selfish? And in my answer to that, I found myself gravitating to this idea of the law of one, which is just all is one.
Yes.
We are one. And since all are one, I cannot serve myself without serving all, and I cannot serve others without serving myself. In some
Mm,
way, it's all accomplishing the same end goal. So naturally, by doing what we're doing, by showing up, by being, fully being, and honoring our preferences and boundaries, we're setting a mirror for others. And we set that mirror, and then it says, you are safe. It is wise to honor your own preferences and boundaries. And
yes.
in doing so, you can serve others. it
Mm.
solidifies, it crystallizes your ability to serve others. Because if I lose myself in the service to others, I'm just martyring myself.
Yes.
That's not love. That's love without wisdom.
Yes.
So love with wisdom becomes a healthy way to serve the collective and to serve self. And then without love, wisdom is self-serving, and it could be termed as evil or service to self purely.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, that's just what we're doing. We're loving with wisdom.
Yeah. A couple things came up for me when you said that. You talked about in our women's entrepreneurial class about an energy exchange,
Hmm.
right? And that kind of came up for me in this when you're talking about whatever we do in service to others, it's the spirit or the energy that is attached to what we're sharing that has this energetic exchange. And,
Mm,
if there is services that are the exchange, relationships, money, whatever it is, it's just whether it's material or immaterial, it's still just energy,
mhm.
right? And that's like it's that energetic exchange that's attached to it. But another thing I wanted to say was I have this incredible amount of compassion for that that martyr response.
Yeah.
I think we're not taught how to approach service. And so many times we're wounded or we're working out unintentionally our own wounds.
Mm,
And so I've seen so many times in the helping profession, I think the statistic is like 87% of the
mm,
people who enter the helping profession have some sort of trauma themselves.
mhm,
And I think about, we know that it's incredibly important for people to get their own help, but even if they do, oftentimes we have these blind spots or these protective measures or oh, this is like a huge one that I'm just kind of been wrestling with recently. What about like that lack of receptivity? Like you don't know what you don't know. And when
mhm.
you think you know something and you think you're right, the door is closed to anything getting through.
Yeah.
This is a lot of what we're seeing in the division of our country right now. Like we have these polar opposites that are like, I'm right, no, I'm right. But in
Mm,
actuality, the stance of I'm right suggests that there's only one universal truth, that nobody else's opinion, experience, perspective matters, and
mm,
that there's only one way to this solution. And so, like, when I think going kind of back to this martyr thing, like we don't get taught how to serve. And sometimes the way in which we're serving is the only way that we know how in this field. And so I've seen so many people injured by these systems in a true spirit of wanting to give, but there's so much ill health around the whole thing or
mm.
lack of understanding, that there almost needs to be like a step back of this. What does it mean in this energy exchange? What does that look like? How does love and fear shape it? what's what are some concerns? Like the whole thing to
Yeah.
me is just something that I'm super cognizant of and very compassionate about.
Well, so here's the image I'm getting. So we know, and this is going into some deeper things that we can flesh out another time, but we're assuming that there are these things that we know that I'm going to lean on for a moment. We know that Earth vibrationally is now vibrating at a fourth density level, which corresponds to the heart chakra, which is learning to love. And so here we are, these like third density transitional humans, um, kind of with our feet planted in fourth density, but still vibrating at a way that's more harmonious to third density. And we're trying to figure out how to do this love thing. Like we're here to learn and to
Mhm.
harmonize just enough with that heart frequency that we graduate into the next density. And so there's going to be a lot of whoopsies. There's going to be a lot of falling
Yes.
off the bicycle. Like we just took the training wheels off and we're falling all over the place. That's to be expected. You know, I mean, one of my kiddos is learning how to ride a two-wheeler right now. So this is really poignant as I'm thinking of this. But there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing bad in that. That almost has to happen. Like we can fast track this to a certain point, but you're going to fall down. You're going to get banged up. You might get bruised. Put on a helmet. Put on a helmet. But that's what's happening. And what's really cool is when we vibrationally shifted the last time from second to third density, all of a sudden in this evolutionary process, humans started to emerge. Like Neanderthal man became a thing. So I'm excited. Here I am looking forward and I'm going, what are we becoming? There's a new evolutionary shift that's taking place. What is that going to look like? Like, what are we becoming? This is so cool. And meanwhile, there's still those of us who are really clunky and falling all over and bruising ourselves.
Yeah. 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 I like that. So do you want to shelve a third, fourth density conversation for next time, or would you like to briefly explain to our listeners what that means? I think because I'm so new to
Yeah.
third, fourth density myself. I mean, I'm literally like 3 weeks in.
Yeah, I think
So,
both and I think it's
okay.
necessary to just explore a little bit and then yeah, we can totally delve deeper into that in the
Yeah,
future. Yeah.
I'll make a note.
Excellent. So third, fourth density. Okay. So, oh my goodness. There are so many directions we could go with this, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert at all. From my limited knowledge and understanding, since I have completed my first reading of the raw material or the Law of One, if you are interested and you want to dig into this, find the Law of One. It is all of the material from LL Research is available completely for free on the internet, on their website. So look up LL Research, Law of One, the raw material. You can find it if you are so interested. If not, then you can just tune out right now, and that is completely fine. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. So the Law of One, Ra speaks about there being an octave of experience in this current iteration of the universe. There's really no good language to describe this, but think of it as, from what we know is the beginning of this thing we're doing right now that we are currently in. From the beginning, there were set up sort of 8 octaves of experience, and they correspond 8 octaves. Wow. No, an octave, which has 8 parts, and it corresponds to roughly the chakras that are present in our physical body. And you're going to go, but there's only 7 chakras. Yes, because the all is one, is that final step in this octave. So we've come through the first part of this octave, the first vibrational level, which was basically roughly corresponded to the root chakra, so red. And then we move up into the second density, Ra calls them densities, the second density, which corresponds to the sacral chakra, so orange. And then third density, which is what we are currently in right now, which is the solar plexus, so yellow. And through each of these densities, there is learning, a long process of learning that takes place. And for example, in the first density, I'm going to grab this, I brought this down this morning, crystal, rock. What we would perceive as something completely devoid of life is a first density being. Okay, so there's assumption here. Second density, once we've graduated out of that, is what we would perceive as a grass, flower, tree. There's definitely growth and life present that we can witness, but the difference is we don't witness consciousness, a recognition of self, which is actually part of the illusion. We are not separate, but there is a necessary recognition of consciousness and self. That takes place once we get to third density. So where we are now, we have recognized I am self. I am not you, although I am. But I think I'm not. I think I'm separate. And I think that there is separation that exists everywhere. And in fact, I project that separation where it doesn't even belong. But that's third density. And in each of these densities, there are lessons we have to learn to sort of shift the vibration or shift the color gradation into the next area or vibration, or harmonize ourselves enough with the next density that we will then be able to graduate or be harvested, as Ra calls it. It's such a funny term, but I guess it's appropriate. So in third density, we are looking to shift our vibrations enough to harmonize with fourth density, which is the density of love. And that is what we see taking place, is people trying to figure out how the heck to do this thing, which is, I just realized that I'm separate and not you, but now I need to love you as though I am you. Interesting. So naturally, it takes quite a few courses of study or incarnations to get this figured out. And, in fact, when you enter an incarnation, we're going to veil all of your previous learning from you, so you have no freaking clue what the heck you learned or what you're doing here, each and every time you step back into an incarnation.
Okay. Whoa. When you just said that to me spoke to intuition.
Yeah. Yes, because
So
intuition
if we're
operates
taking
from
away the facts,
Mhm.
which is the tactile understanding, my cognitive understanding, my intuition is actually that universal, infinite part of me that always kind of is like, but this feels right. Like
Yes.
this, like I don't have to understand it. That leads to this collective, because if we just do what intuitively feels right and kind and generous
Mhm.
and loving, then that feels like part of this collective without the need for language or understanding or all of that kind of thing, right?
Exactly. Hit the nail on the head. It's the whisper of the subconscious. That's what your intuition is. And your
Yeah. And
subconscious holds everything. All
yes,
of the knowledge, all of the wisdom, all of the love, the infinite.
yes. And I love that. Okay. So we know that, okay, a couple of things. We know that our brains, we use like what, 8%, 7% of our brains. So what the heck else is going on in there, right? It's used. I mean, you can't tell me we have 92% of our brain and it's not being used,
Right.
right?
Because if you
There is
took that
some
out of
way that
someone, they would not be functioning properly.
that
Yeah.
is correct. You can't leave. We couldn't do brain surgery and take 92% of our brain and be like, oh, we're not using that.
It's fine.
We don't understand how we're using that. We do not understand. But what that it almost like feels like 92% of our brain and our composition is actually guided by some unknown infinite in ways that are beyond our understanding. Like
Mhm.
I guarantee you in 200 years, we're going to have mapped this entire brain and we're going to be like, oh my God, there were human beings 200 years ago that thought we were using 8% of a brain.
Yeah.
Like that was all our understanding is. So what
And
we
they were the
know,
most
it's,
brilliant of those humans.
oh my God.
That's
Yeah,
terrifying.
right. Right. But I also, just for the listener, encourage you to keep some openness and receptivity. I mean, if you're going to be at our podcast, you're going to have a tremendous amount of openness and an open stance.
Yeah.
But when you think about Ra, or you think about anything that we're talking about, everything comes from the infinite.
Mhm.
Everything. We don't have to understand it. The first people that heard about Jesus were probably like, Jesus, that's like this guy, right? Just a man, right? Or the first person that heard about Buddha, or the first person that heard about like whoever, whatever the concept. Our first interface is sometimes incredulability, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
this, what? It doesn't match. And so I think that's the hope too, is that we keep this openness and this stance of, well, if everything comes from the divine, I can't help but believe that the divine, every single time we discover something new and are open to it, I think the universe is like, yes, like you're not closing things off. That's the very essence of love, is to want to
Mm.
lean in
Mhm.
and say, tell me more. Who are you? I want to understand. When we have this spirit of curiosity about something that new that we're looking at, to me, that just smells like divine meeting,
Mhm.
right? Where it's just this, oh, I don't have to respond in fear because you're not like me, right? So, yeah, I love that, this whole conversation. I don't know how long you want to go today. Or where
Yeah,
are
I
we
know.
at? Where are we at?
I don't even know where we're at, to be completely honest with you. I really don't even know how
I
long we've been,
I feel like it's been
hour and
about
a half maybe?
45. No, I
No.
don't think so. I Oh my
It's almost
gosh.
noon.
So this
Yeah,
may be 2 episodes. So
fantastic.
for you viewer, a listener, you may be getting 2 episodes or 1 episode. Who knows? We don't know. But we've been talking for an hour and 45 minutes.
This
Okay.
this this happens every time.
Oh
I
my
do want
gosh.
I do want to say another note that I took before we started that is very
Yes.
pertinent to this. Ra said, and I quoted this, in the simplest iota of this complex, and they're referring to the mind body complex, exists in its entirety the one infinite creator. So let me paraphrase that. In any iota of your being exists the entirety of the one infinite creator.
Hmm. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I think you've just given language to, it's pre-verbal, but why we feel so much peace when we're somehow connected to the divine.
Mm. Mhm.
Because we can't put language to that experience of feeling everything and all and one and part of it.
Yeah.
Like that's just it's just something we feel inside, and probably we're just like, this is it, and we're probably just like
Yeah.
touching
Yeah.
it.
It's
We're not even
the
immersed inside of it. It's just, yeah, it's the creation, you know.
yeah.
It's why the Sistine Chapel is so holy, because people recognize the that feeling of just touching the divine.
Yeah.
Just like the veil is here and we're just touching it, but we're going towards merging and being part of
Mm,
it. But yet we still are part of it.
yeah.
We still get to be a
We
part of it.
hold
And
the
that's why,
entirety of it, and yet we are
yes,
only a part. Who knows how?
I know. All right, so more to come on that. That's awesome. I love everything we talked about. Thank you for this conversation. I just want you to
Yeah.
know, like, what a gift. Like I love what comes through us and out of us when
Oh
we
man.
like get on a roll and get to talking. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thank you. It feels every time like I'm tapping this part of my brain that I didn't know existed. It's so exciting. I'm like, "Oh, what else is in there? What else do we know?"
Right. Hey, maybe we just used a whole other percent of our brain.
Oh, can we like get hooked up to some kind of what machine reads that brain activity while we're having these conversations? Let's see what's actually going on.
Wait, let's send it out into the universe. Dr. Joe Dispenza. If you're interested in what happens to us I am personally, I can't speak for Bridget. I am personally willing to wear whatever kind of device that you want me to
Yes.
wear while we are having these conversations to see
Hmm.
what is happening in our brains. If you are interested in that, or any of your colleagues, I am completely 100% in, even if I have to sign a disclaimer or some sort of risk, whatever that is, like
Yeah.
what is that? A release. I
Yeah.
will sign your release.
I volunteer as tribute. Until next time.
Until next time. All right. Thank you.
So we just love to send out some gratitude. A special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover art. Her name is spelled Melissa. And you can learn more about Melissa and her work at melissamossart.com. And also, of course, a very deep thank you to Cloud Cult for our podcast music from their song, There's So Much Energy in Us. They have a live recorded version that is just incredible. Encourage everyone to go look it up and listen to it. You can learn more about Cloud Cult at cloudcult.com. And thank you for listening. And until next time, friends, peace, love, and light.